Welcome to Meeting the Inconceivable, a podcast exploring Zen koans, dreams, and the creative life produced by Pacific Zen Institute. Pacific Zen has a legacy of preserving and reimagining the koan tradition to meet our own times. With a lively community of artists, innovators, and seekers of all kinds that extends worldwide, our mission is to create a culture of transformation through meditation, koans, the arts, and conversations about the deepest matters. In this episode, Roshi John Tarrant offers a Thanksgiving story about a miserable student convinced absolutely nothing can help. The teacher he finds offers him a new practice, but only if he promises to take it up for a whole year, no questions asked. The student drags the new practice right back down into his misery, but when he returns, the teacher turns the tables. Tarrant, too, subverts our usual notions of gratitude in this talk and takes listeners right to its source.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you on Thanksgiving weekend. It just makes me happy to be in the temple. That's the first thing. The first thing to say is, so here we are. Thanksgiving weekend, if you're in the United States. You know, Thanksgiving goes with gratitude, and gratitude is such a mysterious thing. And so I'd like to talk about that a little today. But right now, let's just feel where we are. And, you know, whenever we start to meditate, it's a mysterious thing, too. A gate of some kind opens. And we're connected in ways that we might not have been connected before. I guess we're not living in our little telephone booth. The little telephone booth is more of a TARDIS, and we're all in it, the vast thing. So I just feel what it's like, and the sounds. It's autumn here. Gradually different trees the leaves are changing and falling. Something to be grateful for, really. The change of the season, the beauty. And the main thing about meditation is kind of obvious, but whatever appears, we just welcome it. We don't oppose to anything that rises in the heart or mind. Don't set ourselves in opposition to. And then that thing about the bodhisattva path that welcomes people, it starts to appear in our own hearts. And we're not asking someone else to do it for us. So I suppose that's the beginning of things. And to enjoy being yourself, being here, and just feeling the time. There's a kind of pause at the middle of autumn. So feeling the time, feeling the pause, the days darkening, sunny and cold here. Because people like me come to the country for the quiet, there's always machinery running. One of the things to be thankful for. John Cage was helpful to me in that regard. I used to hate it when people ran machinery while I was meditating. And John Cage always thought, all sounds, really, it's an old Zen saying, all sounds are the sounds of the Buddha. Not to oppose anything that rises in our lives. So just letting things come to us, letting the time come to us. And for the time of meditation, there's nothing we need to achieve. Whenever I stop achieving things, it's so great. And then I think, oh, why wasn't I informed earlier? The answer is we go in and out of the different ways and being and states. And it is really nice to stop sometimes. So welcome. What a nice thing. What a nice thing to be sitting in the temple, and how I'm always aware that the temple is huge, really, and each of us has a side, like in a great cathedral, Notre Dame is a side chapel for here, or there's even small churches, these wonderful little chapels, and each of us has some piece that constitutes the whole thing. So good to be here. And I'm just sort of looking around the temple, taking you all in. When I first meditated, the instructions were, don't ever raise your eyes, don't look at anything. If you're outside doing walking meditation, don't look up at the mountain, don't look at the ocean. But now I'm a teacher, I enjoy ignoring that advice and just taking you in. It's like, how wonderful to see the bodhisattvas. There's a time not to look up, and you can tell when that is. There's also a time to just appreciate being here together, a nice thing. So today, it's still Thanksgiving weekend, and I have this layered response to Thanksgiving because I enjoy. It seems like a wonderful idea, like to have a weekend devoted to a harvest feast and gratitude, and there's a always slightly painful thing about have the indigenous people help us survive and then mistreat them. So that comes out, but that's a universal story, of course, and there's that. But also the mysterious qualities of gratitude. I noticed that sometimes when I would, it's particularly a thing in Zen with teachers that people would express gratitude to teachers, and people bring you things they think you'd like, and which is sort of wonderful and alarming at the same time. And then there's one time when people decided that I liked minimalist things, and so they would bring me bones that they'd found on the roadside. And after a while I said, no more bones. And they came reverently, and they'd do a full bow to it. And here are Roshi, here's a bone, and then, but there's something nice about the act of giving is pure, regardless of the gift. Then people would bring me incense, but Zen incense is this complicated, snobby thing that, if you grew up with a temple incense you like, it's sort of like, I don't know, liking tamales if you grew up with them. And then people would bring me, they'd been to India and they brought me Indian incense, very sweet, and all the Zen people would complain if I burned it. So no more incense. So it was really funny. Then I got sick of telling people don't give me things. So I said, anything is good. I will find a use for it. So there's some of that spirit of welcoming as part of gratitude, welcoming things. Thank you. The other thing is I also noticed with myself when everybody would say, after a retreat, everybody would be very grateful to the teacher and say these very grateful things. And also noticed sometimes it was just aspirational. It'd been a hard retreat and I wasn't feeling grateful for anything. And so, but I would like to feel grateful, and I did appreciate the teacher. So so it's a layered thing. It's like one of those, lakes where you go down and it's cold, it's warm, it's cold, it's like that. And so there's an aspirational quality sometimes to gratitude. And then, of course, there's a transactional, or we might say, strategic quality to gratitude. I'll be grateful to you if you be grateful to me, kind of thing. But a true gratitude doesn't have that, like a true appreciation is just what it is, So that's interesting. And so I looked up gratitude, which of course everybody does, and thinking it's actually a lot less complicated word than you might think. It's just from a Latin root, and it's gracias and gratuity. Thank you very much for giving me a tip. And a gratuity for giving you something. That's the strategic, the social obligation side. And gratefulness and things like that. So it's just gratis in Latin. It's a nice word. And so the only way I can do it is like meditation, is I sink into it and think. It's a bit like a koan. If you're trying to work with a koan, you just sink into it and think. It might come to me. It might teach me what it's about. It might reveal itself. And so that gratitude, I think, is like that. If you just sink into it without telling it what it should be, which is always the approved thing that comes on the Hallmark card. If you don't tell it what it should be, it might reveal itself, and that might be wonderful, And so one of the things I noticed recently was, how if you've been influenced by someone, you sometimes can get their gestures. Or one of my first teachers had bad lungs from being in a prison camp during the Second World War, and he would, and a lot of his senior students would clear their throat just like that, completely unconsciously. And there was that, Freud calls it introjection, where we take something in, but we might take in a gesture. I noticed there's a certain way wild fox here looks at things that I find myself tilting my head just like that, looking at things. And then one of the things I noticed was, I think Thanksgiving for me is also a kind of time when involuntarily dreams and old karma come. Someone I had tremendous difficulty with once, and had attacked me wildly and widely and things like that. Which happens when you're a spiritual teacher. It's sort of part of the territory. But also, it just happens when you're human, and particularly happens when you're, if you're me, who's not tremendously careful about some things. And so I noticed dreaming about that person and how they'd attacked me, and in the dream I didn't mind. It was fine, and what a nice thing that was. And another person a couple of people who attacked me at the same time, and they were just really upset, and I hadn't given them what they wanted and things like that. And so it was sort of innocent in a way. But then I remember standing at an altar, and I was standing in Zendo at the entrance to a temple, a dream temple, and I was wearing full kimono, which very rare thing for me, but with all my gear. And she walked in, and I thought, oh, this should be interesting in the dream. And she just walked straight past me, went to the altar, and I went up to the altar, and she said, I've come to take refuge. And I thought, oh, the old, difficulties come, and they've changed inside us, the way my difficult father changed after he died, and has been quite a good advisor, although extremely interested in the weather. And so that sense of sort of generosity. And then I noticed with it, that thing about how, like, the cough is taking in, and then I noticed that, some of the things I've done that with were people that I just didn't even like, and they didn't like me, and it was sort of oil and water and something. And so there was something to be grateful for, to find out we're composed of, no matter what, there's this great karmic wind coming through our lives that we are composed of and influenced by and touched by and helped by people we thought weren't helping us and shouldn't influence us. And so I think that's a big part of the appreciation of life for me, is that I can't find a wrong thing about it, and it's a nice thing. It's rather fun to catch myself at, imitating people who I think, I don't enjoy, and things like that. And they don't enjoy it. I know they don't enjoy me because they told me. But it's sort of rather fun. And so I think it's sort of like that time when everything becomes real, Oh, it's not about having like marvelous, gratitude is not about having marvelous feelings, although it might be, that might happen, but it's when everything becomes real and we're all in the world together. So I want to meditate and tell you a story and a few other things. So at the beginning, what you might notice is that you're already meditating, that there isn't a beginning. What if there isn't a beginning? It's already happening. It's here. and you just don't resist. Just have a kind attitude towards everything that comes up. And if you can't, if that's like, I don't know, that's too much to ask. If that's, have a kind attitude towards that. And that way we realize, oh, the graciousness, gratos, the graciousness spreads out over everything. Just letting the meditation come to you. And the koan, there are a lot of wonderful koans. In fact, we might say all koans are pretty much the same, and they all go to appreciation of life, But, that's what old Robert Aiken used to do. He'd say, and he'd lean. So I'm doing it again. He'd just lean forward just like that. He wasn't ever sure if he was getting through. He'd say, It's kind of sweet. And so Great Lin Ji said, whatever occurs, just take the position of host. And wherever you are, your place will be a true one. Take the position of host. So that's a good koan for thanks. And your place will be a true one. So just let the koan come to you, and no need to work out, how we work out, well, this is host and this is guest and all that stuff, but forget all of that. If you just hear, you'll notice that if you don't fight with what's coming up, you're the host to the whole universe. And even if you do fight with what's coming up, don't fight with that. And then you're the host to the whole universe. So whatever it is, you don't have an opinion. You'll notice you don't need an opinion about what is appearing. And you can just enjoy the vastness of the moment that goes out through the galaxies. So just be quiet for a minute and enjoy your being the host, the position of host. Your place will be a true one. You just take the position of host. Then wherever you are, your place will be a true one. And whatever appears as a guest. It is welcome for the time it is here, and then it leaves and goes home, having been welcomed. Just let it come to you, and notice how the mind is always restlessly searching for something. So, evidence that it exists, I don't know what we're searching for. Pay no attention to the mind searching behind the green curtain. The mind it's like a wind that comes through the thoughts and feelings. And they're beautiful, and they're gates, and they're our life. But also, here you are, the host. You've been that way since before the world was made. Here we are, at peace. So once upon a time, there was a young person who was unhappy and had gone to a really good school and hadn't really enjoyed it, got a really good job and didn't really enjoy that. And there was a teacher, and he came to a teacher who was reputed to be wise. And he said, I'm just really unhappy, and I can't believe that stuff about the First Noble Truth, because every day I wake up really unhappy and I don't get happier. And then whatever I do at night, I drink or whatever it is to get to sleep. And I'm not really, I think, I think I'm kind of selfish, and I just don't really love anyone and don't appreciate people. And so I'm always trying to be happy, but it doesn't work. And or I'm told you can perform miracles, so maybe you can do it. wave your wand. And then she didn't say anything, and he kept talking a bit and said, I've tried things, but fundamentally I meditate for a bit, and then I start looking around the room, and I start scratching, and I start wriggling, and then I sort of get, I get all like, all wrapped up in my life and myself, and wriggle all the time. And then if I'm in a temple, somebody tells me to sit still, and I hate that, and I get pissed off and leave. And but really, I feel kind of sad, and like I want somebody to help me. And anyway, after a while, he stops, and she said, "Well, actually, I can help you." And he says, "You can?" And she says, "Yes." And he says, "Well, go ahead right now." And she says, "Well, I will give you a practice. And this is a practice even you will be able to do. Even someone as you say, useless and lost as you." And she smiled. He could tell she was enjoying him. And he said, "Okay, well, I don't know. I'm not very good at practices. Been thrown out of a lot of temples. And, teachers don't return my phone calls." And she said, "Well, you'll be able to do this practice." And he says, "Okay, tell me what it is." And she said, "Not yet. First of all, you have to agree to do it for a year. Otherwise, I won't tell you." And he says, "Oh, how about a week?" And she just looks at him and laughs. And he says, "Well, okay, a month, 6 months." And finally says, "I don't know, a year?" And she doesn't say anything, just sits there watching him. And he says, "Okay, a year. I'll do it for a year. And you promise it'll help?" And she says, "Do it for a year and you'll know for yourself." And he says, "Okay, I'll do it for a year. And what is the practice?" And she said, "Whatever arises, whatever appears, whatever confronts you, you just say, 'Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever.'" And he says, "How pathetic. That'll never work for me. Don't you have another practice?" And she says, "You promised 1 year. Go now. Off you go." And he looked reluctant. And then he decided she was going to throw him out physically, so he just left. And then she kind of, as the way of things, occasionally she thought about him, but mainly she forgot about him, and as one does. And a year later, and it was Thanksgiving weekend, actually. A year later, he comes back to her temple, and he wanders in looking somewhat disheveled and sort of rather haggard, with shadows under his eyes. And he goes to her and says, "Remember me?" And she just looks at him. And he can tell she does remember him. So he didn't need to ask that question. and she didn't bother replying. So he said, "Remember me?" And she just takes him in and feels what it's like. And as she takes him in, he begins to feel a little bit, begins to take himself in a little bit. But then he ignores that and he says, "Well, I tried what you said, and everybody says you can do anything, but you couldn't help me, and I'm just as selfish and miserable, and as ever I was, and it hasn't worked at all, and I'm just really unhappy." And she says, "Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever." And his heart opens, and he just starts weeping. And he can't actually stop. He just is weeping and weeping. And she laughs, and he falls into her lap, and she pats him on the head, and then he wanders off into his life, and is not known what he did with his life. But whatever he did, we can say, "Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever." So let's just keep sitting a little more. with "Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever." We can tell that it's exactly, she's teaching Lin Ji. Takes the position of host. Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever. Whatsoever seems important to me. It's not aspirational, it's real. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever. Everything that has happened in your life that appears, things you have done that you would rather not have done, things that were done to you that you would rather not have been done. Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever. You can tell why then when he wept and he couldn't stop himself weeping, and then he couldn't stop himself laughing. That could happen. Thank you very much. Everybody's heard that story many times, most people haven't. Still touches me, and it comes to mind when Kuan Yamada, my grandfather in the Dharma, he had a big awakening, and the teacher he was with, he'd been with many teachers. The teacher he happened to be with at the time was Hakuin Yasutani, who also taught in America. And Yamada was kind of a tough guy. He was a big old, ancient samurai family. Don't tell me what Zen is. I am Zen. Ancient gravestones and things like that in my family. And so he could break any rules he wanted because it was him. So he was not break rules, but he could, whatever he did, whatever innovations, they were right. He had a lot of confidence. Anyway, so he goes into his teacher, and the whole world is opening up for him. And he's full of, I don't know, gratitude. Is almost trying to put it in a box, and he just looks at his teacher and he starts weeping and falls forward in his teacher's lap. And his teacher just pats him on the shoulder and says, "Yes, I know." I said, there's something about, I think, this kid, thank you very much, who had never quite considered that he might be at the center of his universe, the center of his world. So, thank you very much. No complaints. Tess Beasley, you have a lot not to complain about right now, I think. So, so you want to say anything?
Well, I can say something about that if you like, but the first thing that comes to mind is as Jordan was playing each string and chord this time, it was almost like each constellation of notes, sometimes a particular one and sometimes a chord, would awaken some kind of feeling in my, in my being. And how it's like each one of those feelings and memories and sounds would come to just meet. And so it was almost this party of whole kind of concert of emotion just start to awaken in my body. And none of them sometimes they went with little stories and sometimes they were just kind of a feeling, but that felt sort of like being the host, not having any idea where they would come from and what might come next or where they might go, but just kind of basking in these arrivals and departures.
Thanks. That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, Jordan.
No complaints whatsoever.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel moved let me just say myself, I'm feeling very much in that department. Sort of moved to be here. And I'm glad you all came. Thanksgiving weekend, Excellent. Alison, did you want to say anything?
Well, your story about the bones and the gifts that would bring to you, I was remembering my very first sessions and the way, when I first came to Zen, there's this tremendous feeling of longing. And in a way, I didn't really even know what the longing was, and of lack. That I didn't have something that that I needed. And one of the things that started to happen was during the sesshin, sitting in meditation these long hours, and then like I remember one morning before dawn, it was a really early sit and it was winter, and going out and walking in the dark out to a point, and the whole ground under my feet was covered in frost and sparkling like this glittering floor of diamonds, and then up above me was the whole celestial firmament, sparkling above me. And frost had always been there, and the stars had always been there my whole life. There had been stars and frost, but how I had ignored and just discarded all of the gifts that the universe was pouring towards me, and looking for this other thing that was never there. And so I remember the kind of shock of how much I had been doing that, and just turning away from the warmth or the beauty of the world. And the feeling of gratitude was one, I have this sort of aversion towards, I have a real aversion actually, towards these gratitude practices. And it just feels so coercive. I just want to sit there and feel like I'm not going to be thankful for anything. You can't make me feel thankful, because it's some sort of known goal that this me being, I don't know, oppositional. But I was thinking about those first sessions, and even now the question of like, when do I actually have the experience of being grateful and appreciative of? And it's almost like it's autonomous. And it's almost like, when you order something on Amazon and they send you a confirmation that it's been delivered, and you open it up, it's like the gratitude is like the confirmation email. Oh, I received the gift. It's here. It's on my porch, and I've opened it up. Yeah. So I think that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you. Jogan, you got anything you want to say? Any of the matters at hand?
Well, I was just feeling gratitude for existing, just for the ability to sit in peace and quiet. It's actually very nice and quiet in my neighborhood right now, and it's not always so. And just the sense of presence, a flavor of fullness to it that I'm appreciating.
Thank you. Who else you know? Serafina is in Edinburgh, I think. It's my daughter, and no idea whether she's grateful or not. But you've got anything to say? I think Ida is there too. She might have something to say.
Yeah. I didn't know I was going to be called on, so I didn't do preparation. I really enjoyed this call-on. Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever. I had some complaints with the hosting one, but I think when you brought up the take the position of host, it's interesting because I really like that con, and I think I embody it in a variety of ways in just generally. But I think over the past pandemic time, so much of my own world has been I have run more of my own world than I like. I don't know if that makes sense. So for some reason, just the idea of oh, you have to be a host, I was like, oh fuck, not again. And so it was interesting. But of course, that's one of the things I value about cons as well, is oh, it's interesting that was my response. I learned something about myself. So I felt that level of fatigue from the last couple of years from the first con. But yeah, from the thank you very much, I have no complaints whatsoever. Yeah, I think I'm going to spend a bunch of time with it this coming little while. I really enjoy it. A lot of things go wrong nowadays, and so it's really great to use that response.
Ewan is here, and are you still in the UK, Ewan? But do you want to
Yeah, I'm in UK. I thought I was coming here to look after my mother since my father passed away. And one thing I've discovered is I'm giving my mother the opportunity to look after me again, which is kind of interesting. We went out for the day today with my sister and my nephew to an emporium and spent the day in there. As we left, it started snowing, which is the first time I've seen snow for many, many years. And I found myself holding my mother's hand and walking in the snow. And there were flashbacks to childhood and just the beauty of being in her presence as well after everything that's happened in the last few years. Yeah, feelings of deep gratitude for closeness, for family. Oh,
Thank you, Ewan. It's a lovely image, holding hands with your old mom and walking through the snow. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever. Doing the silence sort of comes up. It's like a filling the garden like moonlight. The thank you very much is inside everything, but if we forget that, the silence might help us remember. So silence, the old Colin saying it comes out of your own breast and covers heaven and earth. James Anthony, do you want to say anything? I don't know if you're where you are in the world, but you probably.
Yeah, I'm in the Oakland backyard, sitting in the sun by the warm pool, and yeah, I've been noticing that there's a barrier, there's a veil between me and reality. Like reality is nearby, but it's not here, and I want to make that a problem. That story. Oh, Jesus, 41 years of meditation, and I'm still no good at this shit. But I let my awareness rest gently on the sort of the boundary. Like, what is it? What is between me and the sun glistening off the metal chair? And just there, just at that edge, at that boundary, it's almost like a petal. The way the edge of a petal is separate from everything else, and that just seemed to be enough of a practice all by itself, and not particularly going anywhere, and yet everything kind of changing and softening with the petalness coming forward, with the barrier itself presenting, and just a whole kind of softening and down regulating through my body, nervous system. So yeah, that's what we got in Oakland. Just gratitude for the separation and the connection.
Thanks, James. That's beautiful. Very touching. Amanda Boughton, you're here somewhere. We don't have a lot of time, but I'd love you to put your voice in the tempo.
Yeah, I'm just really feeling gratitude. I used to think that something like what Allison was saying about gratitude practices just it felt kind of nauseating and mechanical. And now I'm thinking about just climb inside of thank you as though thank you were a koan, like let it into my heart and also just climb inside of it with my whole body and my mind and just let it do things to me. And I noticed that when I approach it like that, I often do that in prayer at the end of the day. And I'll confess that I like put my normal koan on the side and I just go inside of thank you. And I noticed that it's different because when I meditate, there can sometimes be quite a lot of striving in this sense, like, oh, I'm not there yet. Where is it? Am I almost enlightened? But when I just touch the thank you, it's there's a sense of just, like collapsing backwards and down and into just what's right here. And I don't know what else to say about it, but it just often feels like this almost violent, like crashing back down into just getting to be here at all in the land of the living for a little while. Like, my God, So, uh, yeah, that's what I would have to say about
Thank you.
Climbing inside the con of thank you.
No complaints whatsoever.
To support these episodes or learn more about upcoming programs and retreats at Pacific Zen Institute, visit us at pacificzen.org. You'll find details on John Tarrant's Sunday talks, our Open Temple morning meditation, and our Zen Luminary series featuring intimate conversations with scholars, poets, and teachers of Koan Zen. Thanks for listening.